au corps médical. L'homme a vu tout ton sacrifice. Il nous reste qu'un mot au corps médical. Nous te disons merci, merci au corps médical.
As you're checking on the news, got to realize, find time to know what's better than to compromise. Stay at home is to be safe, don't play with your life. It's so precious, this universe, let's sensitize. The future's at stake and all you see is lack of preserving our community. Let us be.
Welcome back. Earlier on Tuesday, President Abdel Sisi attended the activities of the second day of the World Youth Forum that is held in Sharm el-Sheikh in its fourth edition under the slogan or under the title Back Together. The most important thing about that particular day is a very successful discussion, a seminar, you name it, or a session that was held under the road from Glasgow to Sharm el-Sheikh. Of course, it talked about the climate change and its repercussions, and was attended by the President and by the Prime Minister, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, who delivered a wonderful speech at the beginning of the session. And later on, President Abdel Sisi also shared a discussion with the participants of this session to shed more light on this very important session that was held during the forum. We're very delighted to be having with us Dr. Mohamed Raouf, the energy and environmental expert. Good morning, Dr. Raouf.
Very fine. Good morning to you and to our viewers.
How do you follow the activities of the WIF?
Well, I followed the activities with a great pride. In fact, it's a very successful event in a very difficult time globally. We're still suffering from negative impacts of corona pandemics, especially Omicron variant. So Egypt is to organize a very successful event, which was attended by around 3,000 youths from all over the world, discussing very important topics for the future of next generation. Is something that makes me very proud. And it also very successful in terms of organization, facilities, tourism, telecommunication. It proves that Egypt is one of the leading countries in Africa.
Right. It included many important topics, of course, the discussions every day, throughout 4 days. Very prosperous sessions, and also workshops were held.
Exactly.
But most importantly, something that was very much related to one of the main goals of sustainable development is climate change. The second day, and it was sort of like moderated by Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, and he gave an important speech. And later on, there was also a discussion taken by the President himself, and it talked about the road from Glasgow, started in Glasgow, Scotland, and until Sharm el-Sheikh.
Exactly.
The significance of also the title is very important. Let us shed the light on the outcome of the Glasgow conference.
Yes, but just allow me. So, as you mentioned rightly, yes, the topics were selected. It's a very good selection of very important topics that need to be discussed and debated globally in order also to equip the youth with important knowledge for the future. So climate change, future of energy, social justice, human rights, entrepreneurs, all these are very important topics. Of course, climate change was one of the topics that has a great emphasis, especially on the second day. We know that Egypt will be hosting the next conference of parties for climate change next November in Sharm el-Sheikh. It's a big event, one of the biggest events globally, which might be attended by around 25,000 participants. So it's very important to build upon what happened in Glasgow. What happened in Glasgow last year is something, is a step in the right direction. In fact, we achieved some progress in order to realize the Paris Agreement rulebook, but still a lot of issues to be debated Still there is the issue of climate finance, especially climate finance for loss and damage for vulnerable countries, small islands, different negative impacts, and how to compensate these companies. It's a very debatable topic between developed and developing countries. Still a lot of a lot of discussion about the carbon markets, how to regulate carbon markets, and how to shift to a low carbon economy globally, how to achieve the main target of Paris by limiting the temperature rise to 1.5 degree. Still, unfortunately, according to most of the studies globally, our development patterns globally will not lead us to achieve the 1.5 degree. Maybe we achieve maybe we achieve 2.5 or something like this. So still a lot of work to be done in various sectors globally. Egypt is starting by debating this topic with youth, which are one of the most engaged groups. We know that there are active groups globally from women, business association, business private sector, local authorities, federations, and so on. But the youth movement especially are interested in climate change because this is the future for the youth, and also this is the future for business opportunities for the youth entrepreneurs. So it's very important to discuss climate change, different impacts, and how to transfer business ideas in various sectors relating to clean industries and low carbon industries in various sectors, and what are the opportunities available. So it was a very successful topic to be discussed from now, starting by youth. I believe over the next 10 months we'll have a lot of events as a preparatory for the climate conference in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Right, but let us also take a comprehensive look about the content of what happened in Glasgow. What were the most challenging topics, or the challenges that are going to face the world, the upcoming challenges, which really would arise fears?
Climate change have a very serious negative impacts to biodiversity, to water security, food security, diseases, including pandemics, because pollution release different pathogens from nature to animals and to humans. So the negative impacts are catastrophic for climate change. There are a lot of efforts. The main target, as I mentioned, is to cut carbon emission, achieve carbon neutrality. Egypt announced a very strategic plan involving all sectors and all ministries, because agriculture, tourism, transportation, energy, all those are climate change is not the work of the Ministry of Environment alone, but all, including academia, civil society, and so on. So the
even
main
history.
Of course, every individual are responsible. Your individual choices of different products affect the climate change. If you choose an environment-friendly product to buy, it will help. So small things, but can achieve in total a big impact. As I mentioned, the big challenge is how to achieve the 1.5 degree. This is not achievable up to now. There is a lot of good initiative in Egypt and globally in order to shift to a green economy and a low carbon economy, achieve carbon neutrality. We know that many countries around the world are aiming to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, 2060 maximum. But still all these plans and all these initiatives and projects cannot achieve the main target of Paris Agreement, is to limit the temperature rise to 1.5 degree. Currently, according to the recent study by International Panel of Climate Change, the world temperature reached 1.1. So we have a small window of, according to all studies, of 10 years, of 9 years, according to by 2030, we need to achieve 1.5 degrees. If we don't take initiatives and action in an accelerated way in the next 9 years, we will not be able to achieve the 1.5. And as I mentioned, parallel to this is different technology transfer to help especially developing countries in order to cope and to mitigate and to adapt with negative impacts of climate change, because there might be a serious consequences of climate change globally to coastal areas, agriculture production, diseases, and so on. But maybe you have the ability, the technology, the financial resources, the human cadres, which can deal with these types of threats. But in developing countries, poor countries, it's very complicated. You have a very high threat and you have a very low adaptive capacity. So you cannot adapt to it. So one of the debatable issues is how to transfer the technology in various sectors to developing countries. And another debatable issue is how to compensate the countries for the damage and loss. We have a loss in coastal areas, in cities. Those countries are not responsible for climate change. Climate change, big heavy emitters like United States, European Union, China, and so on. Those are the countries responsible for the emissions. So there is a big debate in order to how to compensate them under Article 6 of Paris Agreement. So climate finance is a big debatable issue, and there is a big focus on climate finance, I think, in the next coming conference of Party in Sharm el-Sheikh. Also the impacts of climate change on water resources, which is very important topic for Egypt. One of the main focus of next COP will be on climate change impacts on water resources and how to achieve water security globally. So if we are discussing climate change, that we are discussing almost everything. So we are discussing impacts on food, and on water, on tourism, how to make ecotourism more friendly, industry, energy. Energy is a big important topic, because there is a lot of many new sources of clean and low carbon emission energy sources, but still the technology is not there. Still the cost is very high relatively to fossil fuels. But how to achieve the energy transition in the next 9 years, and finally depend on renewable sources, clean energy sources.
Right. Before we delve into the session that was held on the second day of the WYF, you raised a very important point, which is the grand emitters, which is the United States, Europe, and China. I mean, the powerful economic countries are, of course, setting some damage over other developing countries.
Exactly.
What about harshening the laws, enforcing them, or studying some means or to be able to try to push them forward and harshen them, and compensation? Was that also discussed in Glasgow?
Yes, this is one of the things that are being discussed.
Because most of the industries
exactly
are coming the fashion industry and all the car industry and motor vehicles and everything is held in
these countries.
Developing countries. Yes. It's not held in the developed countries.
Of course, this is one of the debatable, and because there is a fight between developed and developing countries on compensation. There are some agreements, like they agreed before about $100 billion as a climate finance for developing countries, but it was never met by developed countries. None of them achieved this target. So this is a very hot debatable topic, and of course, as I mentioned, the loss and damage is a new topic that was raised a lot in Glasgow. We achieved some progress by bringing this topic on the top of the agenda, but still the discussion will continue in climate change in Sharm el-Sheikh for this, especially loss and damage compensation, as you mentioned, and climate finance in general, and also technology transfer. It's a matter of not only environment, but also these countries are looking for. They're protecting their business, their economy. There are some good achievement happened in the past with the Kyoto Protocol. As you mentioned, international agreement like Kyoto Protocol are kind of forcing international law agreements that was putting some, specific, targets for each countries, specific compensations that must be made by developed countries. Up to now, we are looking for a new mechanism that can replace Kyoto Protocol and really achieve, fairness between developed and developing countries. It still will be continued. I think we achieved some progress in Glasgow. A new financial commitments have been made. Some decisions about cutting also methane gas has been made, but still there is a lot of things to be achieved and to be decided in climate change conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, including technology transfer, climate finance.
Of course. How did you think or from your own assessment, first of all, we need to talk about, to assess Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli's speech, important speech that was given, and secondly, assess how the session was building on the Glasgow conference. So let us start by Prime Minister Madbouli's speech.
Prime Minister Madbouli's speech is
what were the most important highlights?
Different impacts of climate change, how to engage youth in shaping the new world, and Egypt is hosting a climate cup. Egypt is aware about the different impacts. There is a political will, which is very realizable, different policies, decisions, and different laws in order to achieve environment-friendly business, different initiative by Egypt in order to protect the environment, climate change in Egypt, including natural gas, electrification of cars, energy transition from fossil fuels, a lot of things. But all these things prove that there is a political will in Egypt in order to fight climate change. Despite that, the share of Egypt in carbon emission is very minimum, is almost less than 1% globally, so it's nothing compared to the rest of the world. But this is a global human problem, and we are affected by it, and we can benefit also economically from different new technologies in these. In fact, the future will depend on all what is smart and what has been depending on automation, electrification, digitization. So, but it has to be environment-friendly technologies. So we are entering a new phase, and the countries who are taking steps and policies and initiative in these fields, I think, will be leading the future. And Egypt is working very hard on this, and having climate change in November in Sharm el-Sheikh, I think, is a great opportunity and a proof also from international communities that Egypt is capable of organizing such an event. And also Egypt is one of the countries that are doing a good effort to fight climate change globally. Egypt was leading the African countries in Glasgow, and before that Egypt launched many initiatives for renewable energy in Africa. So Egypt is doing a lot of good work in climate change front.
We totally understand that there are the major challenges like the scarcity of water, like the loss of energy, I mean the decline of some type of energy, and the fossil problems, and other major problems. But for Egypt, how is the climate change going to affect a major or create major problems like challenges affecting our history, for example, the monuments,
I see.
The scarcity of water,
exactly.
The Nile River,
yes,
agriculture, environmental difficulties.
Exactly. So as I mentioned,
which
Egypt
would affect tourism in return.
Of course. Egypt, one of the countries that will be very hardly hit by negative impacts of climate change. We know that at the beginning, we know that there is a potential sea level rise, and the lowland in Delta and the coastal areas in the northern, in the Mediterranean coast will be one of the most affected countries. We might even lose the whole Delta. Can you imagine losing the whole Delta with all these urban
it's
areas?
The source of life.
Population, industries, underground water resources, agricultural. So it's a very catastrophic negative impacts. economic loss is very huge. You know, environmental migrants from these areas will be, you know, a big burden and cause a lot of problems. Tourism will be affected. Currently, people around the world are looking for quality of life, so they want to visit. They can't visit a country or a city that is polluted. They are looking for, you know, high quality of life resorts and cities. So in terms of negative impacts, Egypt will be one of the countries globally, according to most of the studies, that will be hit hard by negative impacts of climate change, including social, environmental, and different sectors will be affected, and water security, food security, health problem, diseases, and so on. Of course, if we talk about the Nile issue, also one of the issues which might be affected due to low precipitation of low rains, and this will affect, you know, the river Nile flow and so on. It will make things more stressful for the Nile countries. That's why Egypt is aware of the problem, is aware of the different challenges. But on the other hand, I am very happy to say that Egypt is taking a very good steps, in fact, in various sectors, preparing itself for the future. Did a lot of work to protect, for instance, the coastal areas. There is an integrated management plan for coastal areas, including different decks and so on, and planning the agricultural land, protecting the underwater resources, using desalination, using renewable energy in order to desalinate water, in order to save energy and to cut carbon emission, electrification. President Abdel al-Sisi announced that by 2030 Egypt will produce its first electrical car. The future is changing, but Egypt is very well prepared and it's planning in a good manner, in fact.
Do you think that the threats of climate change is going to change the face of the world and how it is going to set its priorities, just like the pandemic? It is going to be one driving force to urge changes?
It's a very good question. Well, in fact, to give you a short answer, yes. So either way, if we have a very severe catastrophic consequences of climate change due to high temperature rise of 4 or 6 degrees, the world will change. Different areas will not be inhabitable.
Just like what's happening in Australia right
exactly. Now. People will move, will have environmental migrants, will have severe water problems, diseases, food security, and so on.
And endangered species.
Yes, exactly. But also on the other hand, if we take good initiatives and policies in order to adapt and prepare ourselves for the future, we will see a different future. We will see a different lifestyle, as I mentioned, lifestyle that is smart and environment friendly, depending on automation, electrification, digitization, and so on. So the world, either way, if we take a good steps or if we don't take a good steps, the world will be different from what we know now.
Well, definitely. This will definitely have to be continued because we're very eager to find means and solutions. But as for now, we'll have to end it here. Dr. Mohamed Abdel Raouf, you're an energy and environmental expert. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
For coming. You have a beautiful day. And we're going to go to a short break and we'll come to continue with breakfast show, so stay with us.